Hi friends, I am Dr.N.Sriram. Today I will explain about drug absorption's mechanisms.
Definition: defined as the process of movement of unchanged drug from the site of administration to the systemic circulation. It is also defined as the process of movement of unchanged drug from the site of administration to the site of measurement. Example: plasma. Structure of cell membrane. It consists of double layer of amphiphilic phospholipids molecules arranged in such a fashion that their hydrocarbon chains are oriented inwards to form the hydrophobic and polar heads oriented outwards to form hydrophilic boundaries. Cell membrane. Structure of cell membrane. Double layer of amphiphilic phospholipids molecule. Globular proteins molecules are associated on either side of hydrophilic boundaries. Mayonnaise sandwich. Gastrointestinal barrier, lipoidal sieve, that separates lumen of the stomach and intestine is a semi-permeable membrane, permitting the rapid and limited passage of some compounds. Gastrointestinal absorption is more for some nutrients, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids and vitamins etc. Lipid molecules and some hydrophilic molecules are readily absorbed from gut in passive manner, whereas large polar molecules absorbed by active manner. Mechanism of drug absorption. Passive diffusion. Carrier-mediated transport. Active transport. Facilitated diffusion. Pore transport. Ionic or electrochemical diffusion. Ion pair transport. Endocytosis. Passive diffusion. Membrane transport of drug and other chemicals directly through the lipid or aqueous channel is called passive diffusion. Driving force is concentration or electrochemical gradient. It follows Fick's first law of diffusion. It states drug molecule diffuses from a region of higher CONC to the lower CONC until equilibrium is attained. dC/dt equals K, C1 C2. dC/dt, rate of diffusion. C1 C2 equals drug concentrations on each side of the membrane. K equals proportionality constant. Most of the drugs follows first-order kinetics. Definition. Passive diffusion. Passive diffusion, also known as non-ionic diffusion. It is defined as the difference in the drug concentration on either side of the membrane. Absorption of 90% of drugs. The driving force for this process is the concentration or electrochemical gradient. Passive diffusion is best expressed by Fick's first law of diffusion, which states that the drug molecules diffuse from a region of higher concentration to one of lower concentration until equilibrium is attained, and the rate of diffusion is directly proportional to the concentration gradient across the membrane. dQ equals dAkm/W, CGITC, dTH. Certain characteristic of passive diffusion can be generalized. A. Downhill transport. B. Greater the surface area and lesser the thickness of the membrane, faster the diffusion. C. Equilibrium is attained when the concentration on either side of the membrane become equal. D. Greater the membrane/water partition coefficient of drug, faster the absorption. Passive diffusion process is energy independent but depends more or less on the square root of the molecular size of the drugs. The mole WT of the most drugs lie between 100 to 400 Daltons, which can be effectively absorbed passively. Carrier-mediated transport. It is specialized transport mechanism, without energy, which many essential water-soluble nutrients like monosaccharides and vitamins will be poorly absorbed. The compound involved is called carrier. The carrier binds non-covalently or reversibly with solute molecule to be transported. The carrier-solute molecule complex travel across the membrane to other side, where it dissociates and discharges the solute molecule and travels back. It follows mixed order kinetics. Carrier-Mediated Transport. Active Transport. Active Transport. Example: absorption of sodium, potassium, calcium, iron, glucose, certain amino acids and vitamins like niacin, pyridoxine, and ascorbic acid. Active Transport. Uphill Transport. Energy is utilized. Inhibited by metabolic poisons like fluorides, cyanides, and dinitrophenol and lack of oxygen. Example: Na+, K+. Ca2+ iron, glucose, amino acids and vitamins like niacin, pyridoxine, and ascorbic acid. Active Transport. Drugs having structure similar to such agents are absorbed. Example: absorption of 5-fluorouracil and 5-bromouracil via pyrimidine transport system. Absorption of methyl-dopa and levodopa via the L-amino acid transport system. Absorption of ACE inhibitor enalapril via small peptide carrier system. Active transport is also important in renal and biliary excretion of many drugs and their metabolites. Facilitated diffusion. This carrier-mediated transport system that operates down the concentration gradient, downhill transport. It is faster than passive diffusion. Downhill transport. No energy required. Driving force is CONC gradient. Not inhibited by metabolic poison. Example: entry of glucose in RBC. Intestinal absorption of vitamin B1 and B2. Glycoprotein plus vitamin B12 equals complex carrier. Facilitated diffusion. Facilitated diffusion. It is downhill transport and driving force is concentration gradient. Example: GI absorption of vitamin B12. Pore, convective, transport. Very small molecules, such as urea, water, and sugars, are able to cross cell membranes rapidly, as if the membrane contained channels or pores. The model of drug permeation through aqueous pores is used to explain renal excretion of drugs and the uptake of drugs into the liver. A certain type of protein called a transport protein may form an open channel across the lipid membrane of the cell. Small molecules including drugs move through the channel by diffusion more rapidly than at other parts of the membrane. Ion pair transport. Strong electrolyte drugs maintain their charge at all physiologic pH values and penetrate membranes poorly. When the ionized drug is linked up with an oppositely charged ion, an ion pair is formed in which the overall charge of the pair is neutral. Ion pair transport, continued. This neutral drug complex diffuses more easily across the membrane. For example, the formation of ion pairs to facilitate drug absorption has been demonstrated for propranolol, a basic drug that forms an ion pair with oleic acid, and quinine, which forms ion pair with hexyl salicylate. An interesting application of ion pairs is the complexation of amphotericin B and DSPG, disteroyl phosphatidyl glycerol, in some amphotericin B/liposome products. Ion pairing may transiently alter distribution, reduce high plasma-free drug concentration, and reduce renal toxicity. Ion pair transport. It is important in the absorption of drugs like quaternary ammonium compounds and sulfonic acid which ionized under all pH. Vesicular transport. Vesicular transport is the process of engulfing particles or dissolved materials by the cell. 2 type. 1. Exocytosis. 2. Endocytosis. Endocytosis and exocytosis are the processes of moving specific macromolecules into and out of a cell, respectively. Vesicular transport. endocytosis. Pinocytosis, cell drinking, refers to the engulfment of small solutes or fluid. Example, orally administered Sabin polio vaccine and large protein molecules. Whereas phagocytosis, cell eating, refers to the engulfment of larger particles or macromolecules, generally by macrophages. Cellular uptake of macromolecular nutrients like fats and starch, oil-soluble vitamins like A, D, E and K and drugs such as insulin. Endocytosis, corpuscular or vesicular transport.